Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the DRCOG Board of Directors meeting for Wednesday, March 29th, 2025. I'm Jeff Baker, Arapahoe County Commissioner and Chair of this board. I'm going to call the meeting to order, and would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and with justice.
Thank you all very much for that. Ms. Stevens, would you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Okay, Adams County, Julie Duran-Mullica. Kathy Henson, Adams County. Jeff Baker, Arapahoe County.
Here.
Claire Levy, Boulder County. Ashley Stolzman, Boulder County. Austin Ward, City County, Broomfield.
Here.
Rebecca Lloyd, Clear Creek County. Adam Paul, City County of Denver. Kevin Flynn, City County of Denver.
Here.
Kevin Van Winkle, Douglas County. Abe Layden, Douglas County. Susan Berriman, Gilpin County. Andy Kerr, Jefferson County. Rachel Zenzinger, Jefferson County. Sharon Davis, City of Arvada. Allison Coombs, Aurora. Larry Vidham, Bennett.
Here. David
Spellman, Blackhawk. Nicole Spear, Boulder. Greg Mills, Brighton.
Here.
Deborah Mulvey, Castle Pines. Jason Gray, Castle Rock. Tammy Maurer, Centennial. Zane Plasek, thank you so much. City of Central. Robert Eber, Cherry Hills Village. Here. Stephen Douglas, Commerce City. Here. Michelle Rogers, Dacono. Adam Moorhead, Dacono. Steve Conklin, Edgewater.
Evening.
Othaniel Sierra, Inglewood. Kim Wright, Inglewood. Emily Bayer, Erie. Linda Montoya, Federal Heights. Sarah Dawn Pearlstein, Federal Heights. Ray Bird, Firestone. Don Cognac, Firestone. Josie Cockrell, Foxfield. Lisa Jones, Foxfield. Wendy Padilla, Frederick. Lynette Kelsey, Georgetown. Here. Rachel Binkley, Glendale. Lisa Vitry, Golden. Here. George Lance, Greenwood Village.
Here.
Chuck Harmon, Idaho Springs.
Here.
Brian Wong, Lafayette.
Hello.
Jeslyn Sherzai, Lakewood.
Present.
Stephen Barr, Littleton.
Here.
Kat Bristow, Lockbuoy. Here. Marissa Harmon, Lone Tree. Alicia Brown, Lone Tree.
Here.
Joan Peck, Longmont. Aaron Rodriguez, Longmont. Judy Kern, Louisville.
Present.
Holly Rogan, Lyons. Here. Pauline Whitlow, Meade. David Adams, Meade. Paul Sutton, Morrison. Adam Way, Morrison. Emily Mitchum, Mountain View. Laura Dennis, Mountain View. Here. Nicole Sterling, Netherland. Richard Kondo, North Glen.
Here.
John Dyack, Parker. Terrence Kelly, Sheridan. Tara Biter-Fleur, Sheridan. Lee Bernardo, Silver Plume. Neil Shaw, Superior. Mike Foster, Superior. Justin Martinez, Thornton.
Here.
Sarah Nermella, Westminster. Claire Carmelia, Westminster.
Here.
Bud Starker, Wheat Ridge. Rachel Hulteen, Wheat Ridge. Darius Pakba, CDOT.
Here.
Sally Chafee, CDOT. Bill Soroy, RTD. All right, and with that, Mr. Chair, we do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. I'd like to introduce some new members. We did hear from Mr. Zane Plesk of Central City. Welcome. We have Lisa Vitry, City of Golden, was formerly the alternate. Is Lisa here tonight? Oh, excellent. Thank you. And we have a new alternate that's very well known to us, former member, Paul Haseman from Golden. So thank you for that. I'd also like to recognize Cherry Hills Village Mayor Robert Eber is here tonight. Oh, okay. Mayor Pro Tem. Sorry about that. Mayor. Okay. Council Member Robert, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
But he is here.
Yes. And we also have Clear Creek County, Rebecca Lloyd. Thank you for being here. And Jody Hartman Ball, Commissioner, is an alternate. Thank you very much for being here. And we do appreciate the alternates coming when they can and kind of seeing how things are run as efficiently as possible if I possibly can. So thank you for that. Everyone has had a chance to look at the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, I would accept a motion to approve the agenda.
I would move that we approve the agenda.
Motion from Director Harmon, a second from Director Kern. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the agenda has been approved. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a public hearing tonight. So I've got to read my little preamble here. This is for the March 19th, 2025 public hearing. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jeff Baker, Chair of the Denver Regional Council of Governments Board of Directors. This evening, DRCOG is holding a public hearing on the draft 2026-2029 Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP, and associated air quality conformity document. Thank you for all for participating tonight. This public hearing of the Denver Regional Council of Governments is hereby convened. The purpose of this hearing is to provide an opportunity for all who are interested in these documents to provide comments to the board. Receiving public comment is important to the board's decision-making process. No decisions will be made or actions taken tonight related to this public hearing. There are two ways to provide comments tonight, either in person or via Zoom. If anyone on Zoom wishes to speak, they should raise their hand using the Zoom interface. If you have joined by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand. All comments received throughout the public comment period, including tonight, will be included in the public hearing record. Any comments received prior to this public hearing were provided to the board via a handout at their seats, and I believe we had one that was provided. If you wish to submit written testimony to be included in the official record of the public hearing tonight, please hand any materials to the DRCOG board coordinator after you speak. Board members are free to ask questions of any of those testifying. Todd Cottrell, Project and Program Delivery Manager with DRCOG staff, will now summarize the draft 2026-2029 TIP. Mr. Cottrell.
I'm learning technology all the time. Thank you, Mr. Chair and everyone. So tonight's there we go. That might have been me, sorry. Tonight's public hearing contains about two documents, the 2026-2029 Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP, and the ozone conformity determination. I will note on our website, we have split out Appendix F of the TIP document. Those are the TIP project descriptions, just because of its size, and it's easier to review when those are separated out. I think I will do this. There we go. Before I get into explaining a little bit more about the TIP itself, I did want to explain the context of programming projects within DRCOG. So overall, we have MetroVision, which sets that overall regional vision. One of those themes is transportation. As we dive into additional information on transportation, that takes us to the Regional Transportation Plan, or RTP. This is a long-range, 20-plus year guide for those regional transportation investments. And those are outlined in several different ways. First of all, we have a listing of vision projects, or if we had all the money in the world, this is what we determined that we need for our region without, again, a funding constraint. Next, fiscally constrained projects, and these are broken out into several different ways. First of all, we have the regionally significant for air quality conformity projects. You might know those better as a capacity project, or one ones that might add a lane mile. The second are projects that we have determined or the process has determined as regionally important, but do not rise to the level of a regionally significant for air quality project. And third, we have what we have called buckets or programmatic investment categories, including multimodal mobility, freight, active transportation, safety, air quality, and regional transit. While there's not individual projects listed for those buckets and programmatic investment categories, there is a set amount that is dedicated for those. And finally, that takes us to the Transportation Improvement Program, which implements the RTP. Like the RTP, it looks at 20 years, but it does not contain individualized amounts of funding for those individual projects, unlike what the TIP does. It really is looking at a short-term 4-year program of projects. Each one of those projects is going to have very specific and dedicated funding outlined by funding type and within a certain year. Federal law requires that MPOs produce a new transportation improvement program every 4 years. However, DRCOG chooses to create a new document like this every 2 years, and that's mainly just to keep in line with the annual statewide transportation improvement program that CDOT produces. For the funding types that DRCOG has allocation authority over, we conduct our major calls for projects most of the time every 4 years. The most important thing I think to take away with this TIP document is there was no new calls for projects that were associated with this TIP. The projects that are in the current 24 to 27 TIP document, those were simply just carried over into this document in the appropriate years. But it's not just DRCOG funds that we're talking about. We're also talking about other federally funded projects with other sources that might come from RTD or CDOT, or even a locally funded an agency that might have locally funded project if it happens to be regionally significant. Another important takeaway is this TIP is not static. So almost on a monthly basis, we're making amendments or administrative modifications. Next, just want to touch on air quality conformity. And so based on our regional non-attainment status for ozone, we are required by federal law to reduce pollutants. And when we look at this conformity, it's not going to be based on individual projects, those regionally significant projects that are contained within the TIP or even an RTP. It's going to look at that entire subset of projects because conformity is regional. When we took a look at the draft 26 to 29 Transportation Improvement Program, we realized that there was no new regionally significant projects contained within this document that was not already included in the current 24 to 27 TIP and the current 2050 Regional Transportation Plan. Therefore, there was no new analysis done, both on the federal ozone standards and for the statewide greenhouse gas reduction analysis. We can simply use those previous tests both on the federal and the state level to say that we are passing those. And finally, just wanted to update everyone sort of on the schedule that is coming up. This public hearing tonight does close out that 30-day public comment period that started back on February 12th. You do have one comment, as the chair mentioned, at your seat. Next week, Monday, at the Transportation Advisory Committee, we will be taking it to that committee looking for a recommendation, and then followed up in April with the Regional Transportation Committee and back to this board at your April meeting. So with that, happy to take any questions or comments you may have.
Questions for Todd? Any questions by board members? All right. Yes, sorry. No, you're fine. Director Douglas.
Thank you, appreciate it. Question I have on this public comment has to do with Highway 85. This 85 widening.
I'm sorry, can you repeat your question?
It says 85 widening.
I'm fairly confident to say that she's probably referencing the US 85 project that is in Douglas County, but I'm not 100% sure, but that would make the most sense.
85 goes all the way up north as well. Way up past Greeley.
Director Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Todd, just for my own clarification, can a fiscally constrained project fit under more than one of those categories? Regionally significant for quality conformity, regionally important, and probably not programmatic investment. Can it fit under one only, or can it fit under more than one?
Yeah, if it meets the definition of being regionally significant for air quality, it would have to fit only within that bucket for the regionally significant projects.
Other questions for Mr. Cottrell? All right, thank you. The hearing is now open for those who wish to speak. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to testify. If you've not finished by the end of 3 minutes, I will rudely ask you to conclude your remarks. But we are time constrained here, so we respectfully ask that you not repeat specific points made by prior speakers. A simple statement of agreement with prior testimony is acceptable and very much appreciated. Commenters here in person will be allowed to speak first, followed by those joining via Zoom. Are there any comments from the public? Raise your hand. You can stand up and move to the podium. Going once, going twice. I don't see any. Do we have any comments on Zoom? We don't have any hands raised. I will just advise folks that there are always ways to communicate with us, as Ms. Erica Amador did, make public comments from our website. Are there any further questions from the board? This brings tonight's public hearing to a close. Thank you for your questions and testimony and your interest. Action on this item will be brought before this board at the next meeting in April. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Todd. The next item on our agenda is the report of the chair. I don't have anything to report, so I'm going to go to a report of the Performance and Engagement Committee. We have the new directors here. So Director, let me see if I got it right. Director Kondo is for Performance and Engagement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First meeting for me is in the hot seat, so to speak, and a couple things that we accomplished. First of all, we appointed Director Austin Ward, or actually we voted Director Austin Ward to be the vice chair of my committee, so thank you for volunteering and doing that. We also had some highlights or thumbnails, if you will, of the upcoming board retreat, which will be in April, and I will let the executive director speak to that. And then finally, thank you for the refresh on our name tags. This is really very seasonal and spring-like.
Thank you, Director Kondo. Next up is Director Sherazai with the Finance and Budget Committee.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This evening in Finance and Budget Committee, we also elected a vice chair, so I want to congratulate Mr. Adam Paul from the City and County of Denver in that role. And we also approved 6 contracts that were focused on a range of topics, including the Building Decarbonization Program, Commerce City Community Transportation Plan, and a multimodal supportive local development standard plan. So a lot was accomplished in a short amount of time. And that's it for me.
Thank you very much. Director Rex, your report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much, and good evening, everybody. Thank you. Wonderful turnout tonight. I was a little worried, spring break and all, but you never fail. So we appreciate you all being here. I'm going to start this evening with, as Director Kondo mentioned, the board retreat. So you will be receiving correspondence from us tomorrow. We will open up the portal for for you to be able to sign up for that. So the board retreat is on April 11th and 12th. It's coming up here pretty quick. So I just want to give you a quick rundown on what we plan for that event. So on Friday, April 11th, it'll begin at 4:30 with a board social. We're going to hold this Friday event at the Oxford Hotel, about 5 blocks just down the street here. Right, there's the block right in front of Union Station on 17th. Wonderful old hotel, and we're really excited to welcoming you there. You are welcome to bring a guest if you're so inclined. We'd love to have them and talk about you to them. I don't know what I'm saying. So anyway, so 4:30 social, then at 6 o'clock, we'll have a plated dinner, and we're planning entertainment as well for that evening. Looks like we're gonna have a Denver-based mentalist, Anthem and Aria. Anybody heard of them? Well, yes, we should. That's exactly right. They were on America's Got Talent. They were on America's Got Talent, and I know, Director Vinham, you don't miss that show. You always watch that show. So anyway, we're excited to have that. I think that'll be a fun event. And then on Saturday, the grind kind of starts with our board retreat agenda, and that will be here in the DRCOG offices. The agenda, we just finalized that with P&E tonight, and that'll also be part of the information that we send out tomorrow. I will note that the luncheon speaker, we have confirmed that, will be the new state demographer, Katie Watkins. She's accepted, so we're really excited about that. I've heard nothing but wonderful things about her, so that should be great. But we're really looking forward to having further conversations about the year to come at DRCOG. All right, let's talk about the award celebration. You all are going to hate me. I'm going to mention this every month until the August event. And just a reminder, first of all, the nominations for our award celebration categories is now open. You all know that the event is planning on being held at the Sewell Ballroom again this year on August 27th. And you're obviously all invited to attend, so please mark your calendars, and there will be more information that'll be going out here real soon. I mentioned the nominations are available, and there's flyer at your seat tonight with the categories for the award nominees. Way to Go Award honoring employers and individuals who promote commute options. The John V. Christian Award, of course, is also included in that. It's our most esteemed award, so if you have any thoughts or would like to nominate someone to receive that award, we would welcome that. The Performance and Engagement Committee will choose the recipient of that later on in the spring. Nominations are open now through April 18th, so work with your community leaders to make certain we have a chance to recognize the amazing work you're doing to make life better in this region. Sponsorships. We also have opportunities for sponsorships. So first of all, if you know of anybody that it might be a good fit for sponsorship for this event, please reach out to myself or Steve Erickson, or quite frankly, anybody on DRCOG staff. We'd be happy to hunt that down and see if there's a possibility. I would encourage members and member local governments to purchase a table if they're able. We had a lot of tables last year, and it was great to see not just you all. It's always great to see you all, but it was also great. It's a good opportunity to express your appreciation to other members of council as well as your staff. Right. Take them to an event which we all share in the accomplishments that we all do collectively. So we appreciate any leads that you might have with regarding the sponsorship. We're looking at raising about $80,000 this year, which is about what we raised last year, wasn't it, Steve? Pretty close. So yeah. So this is the time of year I'm always really anxious, and the success of this event is predicated on us raising that money. So please give us some careful consideration. I also want to mention, so we have a partnership with the Urban Land Institute for technical assistance panels. We've been doing this for a number of years now, where we provide funding for 2 communities to go through a process with ULI. And what ULI does, they provide, they form consulting teams made up of ULI's extensive membership of talented professionals in the and what those consulting teams do, they reach out if you have a specific, land use issue or development issue. They help you in coming up with various options and, tackle those difficult land use decisions that you might be having. I will say that last year, the two communities that we did technical assistance panels for were Brighton on the South Brighton development and Englewood, Sheridan Boulevard. Those were the two that were done last year. So just kind of FYI, if you're interested, please reach out to myself or Sheila, right? Yeah, reach out to Sheila Lynch, and we'll be happy to get you going. Last but not least, probably the most important, you'll notice at your desk, your seats tonight, there's a NCAA bracket. So I had this idea last night. I'm like, what can we do fun, right? So I sent an email to Melinda and Steve Erickson. I can feel the eyes rolling when I sent it. I'm like, a good idea. Why don't we have a just friendly competition amongst board members for the NCAA bracket challenge, right? So if you would like to participate, please fill them out tonight. And it don't make a difference if you know anything about college basketball, because quite frankly, my wife beats me every year, and she readily admits she knows nothing about college basketball. So if you want to participate, please fill them out tonight, put your name on them, and then just get them to myself or Melinda or anyone on DRCOG staff, and we'll keep track of it, quite frankly. I'll keep track of it. And we will announce the winner at the board retreat, and there might be a prize or two. So I just thought it'd be a fun opportunity. Yes.
Would there be a prize if you don't come even close?
Maybe. That's not a bad idea. We could do that as well. So I hope you participate, and yeah, looking forward to beating you in the challenge. That's it, Mr. Chair. Oh, I will say, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this. So it was mentioned the new tents that we have made. Ron was quick to point out, Ron Papsdorf on our staff, he sent me an email. He said, he sent me a text, and he basically said, thanks for the Michigan State green on the board nameplates. Right? Well, I know they're not KU blue, so that's it. That's my report. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions for Director Rex, specifically who he likes between Auburn and Alabama? No.
Alabama.
All right. Yeah. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to public comment. Up to 45 minutes is allocated now for public comment, and each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. If there are additional requests from the public to address the board, time will be allocated at the end of the meeting to complete public comment. The chair requests that there be no public comment on issues for which a prior public hearing has been held before this board. Consent and action items will begin immediately after the last speaker. Do we have anyone here wanting to make public comment to this body? Please go ahead and rise. You'll go to the microphone, and if you would state your name and what community you're from, and then your 3 minutes will begin.
Good evening, Chair Baker and the DRCOG Board of Directors. My name
Could you adjust the microphone up a little bit and speak a little bit directly into it? Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Baker and the DRCOG Board of Directors. My name is Ron Spalding. I live in Lafayette, Colorado. I'd like to speak on House Bill 241313, the housing and transit-oriented communities, and the negative impacts to home rule municipalities. I live in Boulder County District 12, which is represented by our Representative Kyle Brown. Includes Boulder, Lafayette, and Louisville, all home rule cities. Representative Brown voted against the House bill. City of Lafayette was opposed to this bill and passed in March a 2024 resolution in opposition to preemptions and burdens regarding housing and transit-oriented communities. They documented very negative impacts to the city. Representative Brown helped convene meetings between the cities in District 12 with the Governor's Office, CDOT, Colorado Energy Office, and Colorado Office of Local Affairs. Our concerns still remain. I understand DRCOG took a position against the bill, and also the Colorado Municipal League opposed this bill, and I know I'm speaking to the choir, and you have great expertise in this area. However, I am not aware of any organized strategy to repeal or amend this legislation to lessen the negative impacts on home rule cities and towns. I see on your agenda this evening under action items, discuss of state legislative issues, bills in which positions have previously been taken. I am interested if House Bill 2413 is one of these. If not, I encourage DRCOG to perhaps have a work session where the home rule cities can discuss and learn from each other the impacts to their planning, zoning regulations, and financial budgets. I also apologize if this discussion is already taking place. This is my first meeting. I've never been involved before, so if you're doing it, please accept my apology. The Colorado Municipal League is having their annual meeting this summer. The Department of Local Affairs agenda on Wednesday, June 25th, makes no mention of House Bill 24 or 1313. Louisville, we're having a town hall with our congressional leadership, Nagoose, and our Representative Kyle Brown, and hopefully we'll get some updates on what may be happening. We need to put pressure on our state legislature and Colorado Department of Local Affairs to educate them on the impacts of this piece of legislation, which may be with good intention, but dreadful consequences. I have observed Lafayette City staff and the yeoman's job they've been doing since it's been legislated to try and comply with the criteria and deadlines set by this legislation.
I need you to wrap up when you can, please.
Yes, sir. I fear that the only way to make a change is legal action against the state for usurping the home rule authority. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, and I see your hat. Thank you for your service. We have two items on our consent. Oh, sorry. No. I think that was the last. We have one more comment online.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Unfortunately, they're labeled only as iPhone, so once I unmute you, please do state your name for the record, and you should be able to speak now.
Please state your name and the community you're from, please.
If you're speaking, you are still muted from what I can see.
Okay, now I got it. Excuse me.
There we go.
I'm not that
Randall?
great anymore in technology. Yes, my name is Randall Loeb, and I live in Lakewood at this point. And I'm concerned because I spoke to you in an unbridled way the last time I talked to you, and I realize most of what I have to say is difficult for most people to understand in the first place. Of course, no aspersions about your abilities, but nevertheless, one of the persons with whom I've worked, a colleague, a person who has worked in immigration rights for decades, who's been here for 30 years with a green card, on Monday when she was having a break at Target in Aurora, was apprehended by ICE and put in detention. She's actually a national leader. She has a family. They must be suffering terribly, but she's now in their custody. Her name is Jeanette Vizquera, and I point out the fact that all of us belong. There's no exceptions to that. And I've been involved with this. I've been honored to be involved in this for many, many years, as I've said many times. But I really hope that in some way we can operate with some dignity and integrity. I noticed today that a number of law firms have been gone after, And there's been a number of things that have been done of a malicious nature by our government. And as I said to you the last times I've spoken, that it's up to us on the very most local area to protect the rights of the people who are here, the citizens, the people who come here, the people who are part of our society, because most of us are hurting. And so my emotional turmoil and anxiety has upped tremendously as an older man, thinking about my family and their family, and what they face as a future. I pray that we can work something out to balance the equation and come to our senses. Thank you for allowing me to participate, and I would love to participate in anything that you do on August 26th or wherever. Good night.
Thank you, Randall. Mr. Loeb, appreciate it. I didn't ask if there was anyone else here in person that wanted to come. Just want to give one more chance. I don't see anybody. Anybody else online? Okay. I am going to close public comment period, and we're going to move to our consent agenda. We have 2 items on the consent agenda: the summary of the February 19th, 2025 meeting, and an amendment due to just an oversight that Director Kern was left off of the list of the Performance Engagement Committee, and we need to correct that. So with that, if there are no objections, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion by Director Conklin, seconded by Director Flynn. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. We are going to move on to our action items. And for that, I'm going to ask for Rich Morrow, our Director of Legislative Affairs, come forward and for these discussions. First will be on bills on which positions have previously been taken, which is attachment D in your packet. And then we'll move on to new bills for consideration and action, and that will be attachment E packet. Director Morrow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everyone. Well, we're a little more than half of the year past the legislative session, but we're also in the middle of finalizing the budget, and that's one of the reasons why Ed's not here right now, but I think he just let us know that they just wrapped up, so he's going to be coming over. So I don't know if you're going to want to hear from him later, but I know you're going to probably want to go home anyway because it's all bad news. So it's a tough year. And maybe since I mentioned that, I'll quickly mention that the AAA funding has had to do some of its share, unfortunately, toward the balancing. Some of you who were here last year remember that we fought, along with others, very hard to get a $2 million statewide increase in state funding for senior services. That was not renewed. Usually in past years, that's been annualized and they build it into the base and so forth. That's not happening this year. So that $2 million is gone again. They also made a decision on a bill that we got passed last year that created a contingency reserve fund for the AAAs to use to be able to access in emergency times. They took half of what's in that fund. So there were other options put on the table for them. But I guess we should be happy that they did not do any more than what they did. So maybe we'll be back next year trying to get some of that replaced. And I'll rely on some of my subject matter experts here we've got a few updates on the bills here. I'll mention, and I know Doug and Ron are going to want to jump in at the appropriate times. The first bill on your list, House Bill 1007 regarding paratransit. That has been amended significantly, passed through the House, passed Senate committee today, unanimous vote, so I think it's going to move along. It's basically been stripped down to a requirement for paratransit providers to create a communications plan for how paratransit services will be provided during emergencies. So that's basically that bill. And so if there's no questions on that, I'll move on. And I know Doug and Ron are going to want even more to talk about the mode choice bill, and I don't know if there's much on the transit. So we could.
I might just go ahead,
Yeah.
just jump in, because, thank you, Rich. There are, three bills I just want to give you a quick update on, because some of them had, some significant changes and others not so much. And I will probably start with the RTD bill, Senate Bill 161. There were three amendments that were offered up, and it passed out of committee. It's now going to appropriation.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Is it calendared yet? Do you know,
Nope.
Rich? It's not calendared yet, but there were three amendments that were offered up. Pretty small amendments. The first one is related to. So you remember in the original legislation, it proposed adding two non-voting ex officio members, one from CDOT Executive Director and then one from DRCOG. And our recommendation was to make that consistent, make that the Executive Director of DRCOG or his designee. Well, that was not included in it. They actually removed the two ex officio members altogether. So I guess that frees up Tuesdays and probably Thursday nights for me. I'm looking for Bill. Bill, yeah, Thursday night too, right, Bill? You guys have meetings? Tuesdays and Wednesdays, there you go. There was also a change to, who would select the members to the RTD Accountability Committee that's proposed in the bill. Pretty benign stuff, but it looks like the governor now gets 5 appointments, 4 from the Senate, 3 majority, 1 minority, 4 from the House, 3 majority, 1 minority, and 2 ex officio current RTD board members to be elected by the current RTD board, and that was as it was in the original language. And the last one was related to the sub-regional service councils. You remember we had a pretty good discussion about kind of empowering the sub-regional service councils in our meeting when we talked about this. They did not accept that proposed amendment from us, but they did include some additional, some language changes in there. The amendment also makes a technical change to add services to the references in the bill to sub-regional service councils. So the RTD is now to consult sub-regional service councils when they, basically discussing routes and services. So those are basically, we were a little disappointed maybe that there was not language specifically in there about, if you recall, the conversation we had about in the bill, the whole concept of, EcoPass and making that more accessible and available, that we run the Guaranteed Ride Home program as part of that. And we had requested that you include language in the bill to make reference to the Guaranteed Ride Home program, and that was not included. We're not giving up on this bill quite yet, at least on this provision. We're going to try on the House side. Our dear friend, Representative Lindstedt, is on the House side, and we hope to have conversations with him, and hopefully we can see some movement there.
Director Davis?
Yes, thank you. I'm a little concerned that there isn't anyone on this committee from a local government. It kind of takes that local government control away from us, that we don't know how to plan what is good transit in our community. And again, I will reference the northwest area of Arvada that was supposed to be served and now is not served by RTD. So we are hoping that somebody from a local government perspective would be.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman, if I may. No, thank you for that. I assume you're referring to the RTD Accountability Committee. They had, there are specific provisions in there, like, expertise with transit planning or services and planning and all this kind of good stuff. We can, once and if this bill passes, we'll make sure that House leadership is aware that local government should be included in this. I will tell you, Last time around, we facilitated the RTD Accountability Committee, and we had, what's that? That's exactly right, yeah. But we had local elected representation on that, for sure, and we'll make sure again.
Director Mulvey?
Whoops, was there any change, I'm wondering, to the scope of service partnership agreements? That was something that came up in the context of ensuring that Front Range Passenger Rail's proposed PPP could include as far north as intended to Fort Collins.
I'm looking at Ed and Jen. I don't know if that's the case, but these were the only 3 amendments that were offered up, Director. So if it was in the original, then
It was a matter of defining range in which the service partnership could be done. In other words, could it go outside the RTD boundaries?
oh, gotcha. We'll follow up on that.
Yes, Director Brown.
Comment than a question, but I had conversations with 2 RTD board members as well as the chair. And I also serve on the CML Legislative Policy Committee, which we met on Friday. And at no point did we hear or have I seen written in any document the RTD board's position. So when I shared that with Julian, he said, I think there's a little communications change that we need to tighten up, because as a elected official from my city, I would appreciate hearing the RTD board's position as we make a decision. Supporter.
Yeah,
Just wanted
great
to share
point.
that.
Yeah, I'm not aware either. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great point.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, Rich, continue, please.
I might just go again, Mr. Chairman, if I may, and, okay, I'll run through this rather quick. So the Mode Choice Bill, Senate Bill 30 is one I wanted to mention with you, because there have been pretty dramatic changes to that one. You remember that bill primarily established our local governments as well as the MPO had to establish Mode Choice targets. There's a strike below amendment on this bill, so all the references to the targets, or at least making them, compulsory, have been removed. It does suggest that, communities could voluntarily form Mode Choice targets, but the strike below language basically requires certain things of local governments and MPOs still. So by December 31st of this year, 2025, local governments of 5,000 or greater in population shall submit all planned transit, bicycle, and pedestrian projects to their MPO. That is a provision that's currently in the bill. And then by July 1st of 2026, the CDOT as well as the MPOs in the state shall create a transit and active transportation project inventory that identifies gaps in the system of each individual system. So the sidewalk system, the active transportation, bicycle network, those types of things. And then we're to report to the Transportation Legislation Review Committee, TLRC, by October 31st of 2026. Listen, it's a far better conversation than what was originally proposed in this bill. We still have some concerns about this, most notably the timelines associated with. Quite frankly, from an MPO perspective, we don't know if we can get there by July 1st. We just don't. And I'm sure there's probably some concerns amongst local governments about being able to get that inventory together by the end of the year. I don't know, right? So we're continuing to have conversations with the bill sponsors on this. But yeah, I think more than anything, I will say the last thing I will mention is that the new language suggests that the inventory shall be used to inform the planning processes of MPOs and the state, as what planning process for plan development and TIP development. So we kind of do that now, to be honest with y'all. So it's just, I think it's more of the timelines that we're most concerned about.
Director Flynn.
Thank you. Doug, could you remind us the bill number on that?
Yes, sir.
Choice?
It's Senate Bill 30.
30, thank you.
And Director...
Jen, I don't know if they have any other.
Ed and Jen, yeah. Do you have any other comments before?
No. Am I on? Hello? Okay, thank you. No, I would just say the bill is also sitting in an appropriations committee, just like the RTD reform bill. So it's going to be a little bit before it goes to second reading and we can make more amendment requests. But so far, the proponents of the bill have been very, very receptive to our efforts for amendments on this bill.
Director Stolzman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make a comment on the 160-1, the RTD reform bill. Just in regard to Director Brown's question, I looked up on the Secretary of State Lobby's webpage, and RTD is in a position of amend on the bill.
Director Wright, then Director Davis, and then Director Lance.
Thank you. My concern is these smaller cities, municipalities, we have 1,000, the cost to us, the timing of it, it's the overstep to home rule authority. And that's where I'm.
Thank you very much. Director Davis.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Arvada, too, is also concerned about this. And in Arvada, we have a lot of pockets of unincorporated Jefferson County we have no control over. So it would be difficult to plan with these quote-unquote gaps. So we're, again, concerned about the overreach for local government.
Thank you, Director Lance.
I would reiterate the comment that was made. This is another unfunded mandate and a requirement placed on us by the legislature, contrary to home rule.
Did I catch everybody? There we go. Sorry. Director Mulvey.
I concur with those comments, and especially since it has this cutoff of 25,000 individuals, with so many of the local governments increasing their population over time. Does that mean we buy into this and now all of a sudden we have to do something extra if our population happens to go up? And when is that population measured? Those are things I'm thinking about.
Want to try to?
Well, no, I don't know if I can answer the question. I think we share your similar concern, with regards to unfunded mandates. I mean, our name seems to be used a lot in legislation in the last couple of years, and that's been a concern, and we always share that with the bill sponsors. It's like, we receive money from primarily the federal government with the help, of course, of local governments for the local match on that monies to perform a very pro forma federal planning activity. And I think, there are times in which legislation at the state aligns with that work that we're doing at the federal level, but sometimes it does not. And it will require additional resources for us to be able to do that. And it just sometimes it, kind of falls on deaf ears, which is kind of frustrating. And I know you all are feeling the same. Mr. Chairman, I know we're in an amend position on this bill right now, and I appreciate if we can just move forward with the comments we received today to continue to work with the bill sponsors, and hopefully we can arrive at something which is palatable.
Any further discussion about that? Any objections? Yes, Director Lance.
A question, Mr.
Yes, sir.
We're getting near, by the time we meet again.
Yeah. It's a good question, Ed and Jen, Rich.
The bill's still in the process, so I guess it's not too late. If that's what you're asking.
Like if we were
procedural.
Like next month.
Yeah, it's in appropriations, I think, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Yes. And it still has to go through another chamber.
Yeah.
I don't want to, because I think Director Stolzman had another comment. Okay. And I would that be a motion, Director Lance? To change our?
Yes.
I think we have a motion to change from an amend to an oppose. Director Vittum.
Okay.
Have a motion and a second. Further discussion. Bill number is 030, Senate Bill 025-030. 0030, I guess. Any further discussion on that? Again, some communities may have their own position that has been taken on that and may not be able to change that without addressing their, so in that case, what I would like to do is ask if there's anyone that would need to abstain from taking a vote on that. And we'll take account of that. Please keep your hands up if you would have to abstain. Did you get Claire? Okay. All right. Further discussion? Yes.
And I apologize. Sometimes it takes me a minute to think about questions when things are moving in directions I don't expect. I'm just wondering from a sort of lobbying perspective, I mean, we've been in an amend position, so we've been in the room having these conversations, trying to get it to a place that's a little bit better for DRCOG. So just wondering what it would mean to switch to an opposed position from that perspective. Does that mean we're not in the room anymore, not sort of talking with folks about changes?
I think Rich, Ed, if you could comment on that.
Yeah, thank you, and certainly Rich, jump in.
Could you direct the microphone a little bit?
DRCOG was in an amend position. They took a bunch of our amendments. Already. DRCOG was in an amend position. They took a bunch of our amendments, not all of them. I am concerned if we switch to oppose tonight that we will have a harder time getting future amendments on. Rich?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. And others correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I think they've met with us and talked with us in good faith and have made most of the amendments, or at least a number of the amendments. That may not be enough for the board, but it is sometimes a perspective of those of us down at the Capitol and the relationships with the legislators, and we take that into account usually when we're making decisions.
Further discussion? Director Maurer.
Is there a way, Ed, you could possibly amend so the local agencies don't have to prepare a mode choice implementation plan? I think that's where I'm looking at that. That's going to cost our agencies money to do that, right?
That is not part of the bill. The strike below took that out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, what local governments have to do now is report their bike and pedestrian inventory to DRCOG, or an MPO, excuse me, and then the MPO then comes up with the mode choice plan essentially and transfers that over to CDOT. So really it has been the burden is on MPOs now rather than local governments. So of course there is a little bit of a burden on local governments.
Director Lance?
There's still a requirement upon local governments to report this requiring staff time, which is an unfunded mandate. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Their discussion? Okay, we do have a number of the abstentions that would be required. What I'd like to do, we have a motion and a second on the floor. The motion is to change our position of amend to oppose. So first I'm going to ask for those who are in favor of the motion to change from amend to oppose. Please raise your hand if you're in favor of that. Favor of changing the motion of our position, changing our position from amend to oppose. Seven. Do we need to take a vote of? Okay, all who are opposed to the motion to change, please raise your hand. The motion to change our position has failed. We stay at an amend position unless there's another motion. Director Wright. If you could make sure your microphone is on.
Is that better?
Yes.
One of my concerns is, number one, the Home Rule Authority. Is there a way that we ask and work that it is the home rule authority, the municipality's choice to participate in this, especially with smaller cities, and possibly work with, those that are working on this bill, that they be more flexible.
I think, through your own lobbyist and also our lobbyists are in the room and they're taking notes. So I'm not sure if, Ed or Jen, you want to comment on that?
Yes, absolutely. An amendment of that sort has been floated. There has been some conversations around that, but we don't know if it's going to be added as of yet.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, I was just looking up, for what it's worth, I checked, both CML and CCI are in amended positions at this point.
Applicant. All right, Director Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to point out the impracticality of meeting some of these local government requirements. I'm very sympathetic to the mayor's motion. I do believe it's more prudent to do the vote that we did, because if we get amendments that we took a position to amend, when we get most of them, it's really imprudent to then oppose it. So I agreed with the vote, even though Denver had to abstain. But I will point out that Denver voters a couple of years ago passed a sidewalk fee that we have had a devil of a time reconfiguring so that it would actually do something. We are about to undertake a sidewalk gap study. I don't believe that Dottie, our public works people, can even finish it by December 31st. And what is a sidewalk gap? What is a gap in the bicycle network? When we have some jurisdictions might not even have established a bicycle network yet. So maybe, I don't know, Ed, Jen, Rich, if you can communicate to the sponsors just how impractical this is for a lot of governments, not just small towns, but the city of Denver.
Sure.
Thank you.
And Doug and Ron have been giving us ideas about amendments and suggested language. We talked about how do you define gap and other things like that, so.
Well, thank you. In the interest of time, I'd like to go ahead and move on to the next set of bills. Yeah, all right, we'll just go to
Hang
new
on just
bills.
a second,
Director Stolzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ashley Stolzman, Boulder County. I did just want to say in this section on the bills which we've previously taken positions on, just thanking the Boulder County resident from Lafayette for coming today. We typically just talk about bills in this legislative session, but I do want to elevate his suggestion. I know this group, when we come together on a topic and brainstorm and work together, we see real outcomes. And I think that's the power of this body as DRCOG. Like, if we work collectively, we can be very strong. And so I do encourage that. I think a lot of people are working on this issue of like implementation and issues and complexities, and some communities are working on lawsuits. So I do think a share out opportunity would be fantastic, and I would attend and support that.
I agree, and I believe Executive Director Rex has given his contact information to the gentleman, and we will try to see that come forward. Thank you for your suggestion. All right, we're going to move on to the new bills to be considered. I believe we have one bill. It looks like two, but wait a minute.
Okay. Yeah, there's still one.
Okay.
So you know this is the construction, what is it, Doug? Construction litigation bill, right?
Yeah, construction litigation reform.
Oh, yeah, scroll down. House Bills 1272 and House Bill 1261. Both were heard in committee Monday, Tuesday?
Yesterday.
Yesterday, it was yesterday. I already forgot. There we go. Nope. Oh, Melinda, you're right. You told me to go to the next tab. Sorry. Jesus. Okay, there we go. So 1272, well, 1261 is the first one on the list. That was postponed indefinitely and that was postponed indefinitely unanimously after 1272 was heard before it and passed 12-1, I believe.
12-1.
And as I understand it, maybe I'll just let Jen take over or Doug, but we were all listening to it. But I'll make one comment. I think that at least some of the elements of 1261 were amended into 1262, or at least influenced some of the amendments for 1272 that I think maybe were described as more consumer friendly, if you want to call it that. Because there were a few of the legislators who had planned to vote no on 1272 voted yes with those amendments. But with that, my sense is that this bill has an extremely good chance of passing.
Yep, thank you, Rich. And there we go. Hopefully, yes. Okay, good. I'm on. So this bill has changed quite dramatically, and in fact, based on your packet, really the summary that's in your packet really is no longer relevant.
I didn't have time to change it, no.
I'm still trying to dig through everything. They ran in committee, the sponsors of the bill ran a large amendment, and then they ran several other amendments to amend the amendment. So we're still trying to kind of flesh it out, but the middle market housing program, which I think is what it was before, is no longer. There is now a multifamily construction incentive program. So that this is now the new direction of the bill, and essentially this program creates a warranty, if you will. And so this warranty is now more of the assurance that the home builders, developers have to build more affordable housing, multifamily affordable housing for home ownership. Some parts of the warranty program come with certain coverages, like you have a year for workmanship, 2 years for plumbing and electrical, and there's 6 years for any major changes. With this warranty is a third-party inspection. Part of the bill 1272 prior to this amendment getting on in committee yesterday was a rebuttable presumption that if a local government approved a certificate of occupancy, that unit was deemed to have this warranty or to have, better standards, if you will. That has been removed from the bill. That was a big concern for a lot of local governments, as well as some consumer advocates as well too. So that part is no longer. So there's even language in the bill, in the new bill, that does talk about how local governments are not held liable for the inspection. So this new multifamily construction incentive program, really the point of it is to allow any kind of defect to be mitigated by a builder or a builder of the homeowner's choice before an insurance claim is filed or before litigation happens. And it's those protections that is the thought is that more builders will come back to the market and build these more affordable homeownership units. So that's a very high level of what the bill does, the intent of the bill, and the new direction that the bill has. Rich did mention there were a few things that 1261 influenced in this bill. One of those was the statute of limitations or the statute of repose on any defect. In the old bill, there was, for one thing, there was 6 years, and the other thing, there was 10 years. They kind of came together to a happy medium. There's now an 8-year I don't think it's actually referenced as a statute of limitations, but it does say that a claim must be brought within 8 years of a defect. So that was one thing that 1261 influenced in this bill. There was talk about including an insurance study in this bill. Some of you may remember one of the bills from last year would have required the Division of Insurance to study the insurance market for construction defects. That could not be added to the bill because that would have ran a fiscal note. I think the bill from last year had about a $180,000 fiscal note or something. And of course, as we know, or as Ed might mention here in a few minutes, the state has no money. So that would have been a poison pill on the bill. I imagine there could be additional changes to this bill. I do agree with Rich's opinion that I think this one is going to pass. I get the sense, one, that legislators are sick of having this conversation. They want to pass something. They certainly want to be responsive to their constituents. We knew coming into the session that affordable housing was probably the #1 issue. Certainly that was the #1 issue that new legislators that Ed and I met with prior to session starting, that's all they talked about. was affordable housing. So I do think this one has legs. It was bipartisan. There was one no vote, and I imagine the bill will work its way through the legislature, and everyone should hopefully be happy on the construction defect side. So that, again, a little bit of the summary. I'm sure there's more details. I haven't necessarily got into them. I will say there is nothing that the insurance industry wanted in this bill, so there is some wonder whether or not insurance costs will go down. There is nothing that has to do with breach of contract. If there is a builder that puts in the wrong windows or uses the wrong siding that leads to a defect, there is still an opportunity for a homeowner to bring a suit under a breach of contract. I know that was talked about a lot, and that was one of the consumer protections that folks wanted in the bill. So, yes, there is my summary. Thank you.
Is there any quick detail about incentivizing multifamily housing? Like what kind of incentives?
No financial incentive, Mr. Chair. So, yep, there's no tax credit or anything like that. It's just this warranty.
Okay, gotcha. The warranty.
Of a better warranty.
That would include condos, though. Questions, comments? Director Mulvey.
I have one question, and it's fairly granular because I'm in the business, but it's pertinent. The statute now requires an inspection within a certain period of time once the claim is made, but if the claimant is required to have mitigated the damages, that may limit the ability to have an inspection. Has that changed at all, the inspection requirement?
I'm not sure I've done that deep of a dive into that particular.
I think people in the business are the only ones who probably care about that. I'd like to speak on the subject of our position, but no motion is pending, so I'll reserve that.
Okay. We have other folks that want to comment. Director Barr.
Yeah, our city council just discussed this last night and also shared concerns. I think I saw many heads nodding around the liability of the certificate of occupancy portion of this, with that being now removed. I think we're, at least the city of Littleton is in a much more comfortable position to support the bill going forward. So I'd be in support of a supportive position. That sounded dumb.
Director Coombs, then Director Paul.
Yeah, so in the past, in this discussion, there have been some questions from the consumer advocates about kind of the mechanism for choice and response from the consumer to a planned remedy of a defect by the builder. How has that been addressed? Like, what is the procedure for the homeowner to give their input and their remedy?
From what I know, this bill does place somewhat of a reasonable duty on a homeowner to mitigate the damage, to stop the damage, and then notify the builder, use that builder or use a builder of their choice or a vendor or contractor or someone who can mitigate that so that the damage does not cause anything more or doesn't become a little bit more serious.
So it's up to the homeowner how the defect is remedied. It's no to the builder?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
The homeowner does have that choice.
Director Paul and then Director Mullica.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to say on behalf of the mayor, we do support this. This is one of the opportunities where I think city council might not have a position yet, but this was also a high priority for three mayors, Colorado Springs, Aurora, and Mayor John.
Director Flynn in rebuttal. Just
Not at all. Not at all. The fact is,
just kidding. Yeah.
the fact is, we don't have a dictator at the head of our process.
I told you rebuttal. I told you.
I have 6 of the 13 members supporting it and 4 who haven't weighed in yet, so I'm frustrated sitting there having to abstain.
Understand. Director Mullica.
You know, this has been a bill that I think this region has been asking for a very long time now, and I know a lot of people are really excited that it's here and it's doing well so far. So, if the chair will allow, I would like to make a motion that, DRCOG supports, House Bill 1272.
Thank you. There is a motion, and I see a couple of hands. Second? Okay, multiple seconds. And Director Spear and Director Ward are seconding, and that frames the conversation for any further discussion. I know Arapahoe County's position was on, we had one amendment that we were asking for, if I'm not mistaken, and that was for removal of the certificate of occupancy presumption. So I kind of feel comfortable voting on this myself too. I'm hoping we'll see what I think, well, we'll see. So for those that would have to abstain, please raise your hand. Keep your hands up and we will. All right, thank you very much. We have 6 that need to abstain. So we'll do some quick math. 21 to pass. So all who are in favor of supporting, and I forgot the bill number now.
1272.
1272. Please raise your hand. There were 30 voting and all opposed that want to be on the record of opposing. Please raise your hand. So the measure does pass and we are in a support position. Thank you very much. Anything else from
Director Baker, if I could, just to clarify, that motion was to support as amended?
As amended,
okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So, Mr. Chair,
yes,
we got
Rich.
2 minutes left on the agenda. Can I ask Ed to say a word or two about the budget?
Yes,
since
that would be
been,
very appreciated.
He's been spending his life there these last few days.
Thank you, Rich. Mr. Chairman, the Joint Budget Committee is in the final throes of balancing. The long bill is scheduled to be introduced in the Senate on Monday. It may slip a day or two, but they are making their decisions. The one decision that we kind of knew was coming that they made with regard to state funding for senior services, it was moved from 14 million to 16 million this year. They moved it back to 14 million for next year, which is tough to lose any money from that with long waiting lists, but we kind of knew that was happening. The only other issue I want to mention had to do with the state revenue estimates. For maybe about 8 or 9 years, the senior homestead exemption has been funded and has counted as part of the Tabor refund. That is the first Tabor refund. Senior homestead exemption costs the state roughly $170 million to reimburse the local governments that lower the property taxes. This year with portability, it's closer to $200 million. On Monday's revenue estimate, the Tabor refund estimate for this year is $108 million. So the legislature knows that it has to come up with additional funding to keep the senior homestead exemption going. I have heard no legislators say they want to amend that program, so I am hopeful, maybe even confident that they will find the money to do that.
Ken, do you have anything to add?
It's all bad news anyway, so. Sorry.
All right. Any other questions for our lobbyist team? And I want to say thank you to Ed and Jen and to Rich. You do the yeoman's work down there at the Capitol, and thank you so much.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I just wanted to make a statement in regards to the Lafayette resident who did speak as well, because I know this is a challenge that we as Lafayette are having with a number of members of our community coming out concerned about the home rule challenge. And I think the sensitivity that we see on every bill that comes out of the state, that it would behoove us as an organization to determine if we may form a committee or a lobbying group that works and coordinates to share our opinions with our state representatives after the session ends and prior to the next session, because I really think the representatives need to understand our sensitivity to every piece of legislation that comes forward that threatens home rule. And I get that sense in the last couple meetings. So I would like to propose, on top of Director Stoltzman's recommendation, that we form a committee to perhaps lobby our state legislators to educate them on our concerns. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I see a lot of heads nodding. I think I'll ask Executive Director Rex to do his best to get something put together.
Yes, sir.
All right. We are now on to our informational briefings. The first one is Regional Housing Needs Assessment and State Compliance Public Review. We're going to hear from Zach Feldman from our Regional Planning and Development.
Hi, I'm Zach Feldman. I'm an economist here at DRCOG, and I manage the data and analytics team. We're happy to give an update now that we have a lot more information from DOLA around our regional housing needs assessment and its compliance with Senate Bill 174. So a bit of quick background. DRCOG's Regional Housing Needs Assessment the process started much earlier than 174. So it was just kind of lucky timing on our side to be able to have that available. The scoping discussion and peer research occurred in 2022, 2023. Needs assessment began in October 2023 and was accepted by the board in 2024. And these are going to be our kind of early steps towards a regional housing strategy. This needs assessment broadly fits into DRCOG's work on housing, and it's not a standalone piece. So the needs assessment was the first step. The housing strategy began in February and will be finished in January or February 2026. And then hopefully that will lead to broader work in the region towards more affordable and more diverse housing. So where this fits into the legislative context, Sustainable Affordable Housing Assistance Act, otherwise known as Senate Bill 24-174, requires local housing needs assessments, with an exception being jurisdictions that participate in a regional housing needs assessment. And we're going to get to, on the next couple slides, what participation means. It's actually very specific in the legislation. Additionally, the legislation provided a way for existing assessments to be reviewed and accepted by DOLA if they were submitted by December 31st, 2024. So the status of DRCOG's needs assessment in this context, December 2024, DRCOG staff submitted the regional housing needs assessment. February 2025, we received conditional approval. So conditional approval is what DOLA is, that's their kind of naming for almost being to substantial conformity. So we have a couple small technical changes. We've discussed them with DOLA and anticipate no issues. So they've effectively signed off, and after those changes are made, there is not another round of approval. So DRCOG's assessment is kind of ready to go. So the participation process, what is considered participation is local government's governing body reviewing the assessment at a public meeting during a 60-day review window. That 60-day review window can be determined by DRCOG, DRCOG staff, DRCOG's board, local jurisdiction. So there's nothing stipulating when that 60-day window has to begin, but the public review needs to be in that 60-day window. The other piece of it is that comments need to be provided to DRCOG. DRCOG staff will then send those to DOLA. So that is what is considered participation in the Regional Housing Needs Assessment. We're going to run through a couple of kind of frequently asked questions. We get these a lot, so we wanted to kind of get out ahead of them. What does participation in the Regional Housing Needs Assessment provide? So it allows a jurisdiction to use the Regional Housing Needs Assessment for the statutorily required housing needs assessment. So in the action plans required by 174, a needs assessment is required. This allows the jurisdiction to use DRCOG's Regional Housing Needs Assessment instead of producing a local one. Now we're going to have a couple about what it does not do. So does participation in the Regional Needs Assessment prevent the production of a local housing needs assessment? No. So a jurisdiction could decide to produce a local needs assessment and participate in the Regional Needs Assessment. Does participation in the Regional Needs Assessment limit the incorporation of a statutorily complying or non-compliant local needs assessment into the required local housing action plans? No. A jurisdiction can incorporate a local needs assessment and other local reports into the housing action plan with or without participation in the Regional Housing Needs Assessment. So this participation in the Regional Needs Assessment really puts no limits on what goes into the action plan that is due at the end of 2027. What is the consequence of not conducting a public review of DRCOG's Regional Housing Needs Assessment? If a local jurisdiction within DRCOG's area does not conduct a public review of the assessment during the 60-day public review window, they cannot use the regional assessment for their statutorily required assessment. So based on the statute language and our discussions with DOLA, there does not appear to be any other way to kind of get back into this participation if this 60-day review window is missed. So what are the next steps? April, there'll be a webinar for jurisdiction staff where we'll provide details on our needs assessment, what information we can provide to jurisdictions from our needs assessment dashboard. May and June, we're going to have office hours available with DRCOG staff. So there's any one-on-one questions that jurisdiction staff have, there'll be opportunity to have these discussions throughout May and June. And then we're looking to start that 60-day review window in July. Now, are there any questions?
All right. Questions? I do see Austin Ward.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question about the public hearing or public review process. When they stipulate it has to be heard in the public, does that have to be at a business meeting for a local government, or can it be heard at a study session, where a study session? The only difference being we hear public comment at one and we don't hear public comment at study sessions.
I think that would be a question that we may have to pass on to DOLA to get clarification. The bill is relatively short in the wording of that requirement. It's mostly just that it has to be a public hearing of the local governing body.
Okay, that'd be great.
Yeah, so we can relay that to DOLA and try to get clarification.
And then my last question is, I know it has conditional approval with DOLA. Has DRCOG submitted those technical changes and received full approval, or is that still pending?
So in our discussions with DOLA, when we talked with them back in November, December, and we heard the same thing this month, there basically isn't a there won't be a need or process to submit those back to DOLA. So we will incorporate them, and we're basically on a honor policy that we will make those changes and incorporate, and they're relatively minor technical changes.
Okay, great. Those are my only questions, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Yes. I can't see your name tag. There we go, Director Lloyd.
Hi. Okay, I'm just getting up to speed on these things. This is pursuant to Senate Bill 24-174. Was that enacted into law, or, okay, do you happen to know the site for that?
Actually, at the end of our, oh, no, we don't have the link in here. We can provide the link. So DRCOG's website has a page on the needs assessment, and then we can provide a link to, well, DOLA's supporting webpage for 174.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
Chairman, I may real quick on this. So I just want to reemphasize, and thank you, Zach, for the presentation, that, you know, obviously you don't have to use DRCOG's regional assessment for this work. You know, but in case you are interested in doing it, even if you don't go through with that action of using DRCOG's, in order to make yourself at least eligible to use it, you might want to consider doing the 60-day public review period. We think that would be useful. We are planning on providing, Zach, you might have said this, I stepped out for a few minutes, but we are planning on providing just some information for you all, like a draft agenda item, those types of things for your staff to make the process just a little bit easier on this stuff. But to be honest with you, I think the major work for local governments is in the action plan associated with this bill and not on the assessment. I think that's, you know, that's our perspective, that, you know, if you don't have to spend a lot of time on the assessment, you feel comfortable enough with DRCOG's, then maybe you should consider. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope you're filling out your brackets. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. All right, thank you. Any other questions? If not, thank you very much, Zach. We're going to move on to item number 12. This is the 2026-2027 Unified Planning Work Program kickoff. And we've got Josh Schwenk, Senior Planner, here to talk to us about this. And Ron Papsdorf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I am Ron Papsdorf. I'm the Division Director, Transportation Planning and Operations Division, and I have to do something with the slide deck. Thank goodness for Josh. Why they don't allow me up here very often? We have the best staff here at DRCOG. I don't know about the rest of you, but my allergies are killing me, so bear with me a little bit. But thanks for the opportunity to be here. Wanted to take some time with all of you this evening because we are kicking off the process to develop our next 2-year work program we call the Unified Planning Work Program. And the reason I wanted to sort of introduce this topic and kind of tag team with Josh a little bit is because this really is an important thing for you. It is your opportunity to basically tell us what to do as your metropolitan planning organization. This is our work program. This is what we say we will do to meet our federal requirements as the Metropolitan Planning Organization, or MPO, to do metropolitan planning on your behalf with you and in partnership with CDOT and RTD as the state DOT and the transit provider in this region. And we do this because it's not just sort of the things we're going to do, it's really the allocation of our staff resources and our financial resources towards that work. So it involves choices, because if we do thing one, we can't necessarily do thing two. So we do have finite resources to carry out this work. So I want to kind of provide a little bit of a framework for what metropolitan planning is and how that influences the work program that we will develop and bring forward for your consideration and approval. And then Josh is going to kind of talk a little bit about sort of the structure of our current UPWP and lead a little bit of an exercise to get some input from you and just to describe the process we're undertaking. We're really kind of doing a funnel approach this cycle. We want to help identify sort of the big issues, concerns, challenges, or opportunities that we might have in 26 and 27 to help then shape what activities we might pursue to address those priority issues for the region with you as your MPO. So without further ado, talked about that, and we're going to do a little bit of an overview. The current planning, the work program, a little bit of a mentee exercise to get some input from you all. So as I'm droning on, you can get your mobile device out and be ready to engage in that mentee exercise, and then we'll talk a little bit about next steps for the process. So what is this thing we do that's metropolitan planning that is guided by federal law and regulation? So we don't make this stuff up. Congress passes legislation that lays out the framework for what metropolitan planning is and what metropolitan planning organizations have to do. So we are responsible for carrying out this coordinated planning process for transportation across our metropolitan planning organization boundaries. That includes a long-range plan and a transportation improvement program. You all hear about those fairly often. We work with a variety of interested partners and stakeholders in that process. It is a performance-based approach to making decisions and setting priorities for the region in primarily transportation. We also, because of our size, we do that consistent with the development of a regional intelligent transportation system architecture that we develop. And then we also prepare a coordinated public transit human service transportation plan for the region that talks about transit and human service transportation services. We are required, because of our size, to also complete a congestion management process. So every year you see a congestion report that our staff prepares and presents to you. That's part of that congestion management process. We also develop a long-range transportation plan. It's in statute, it's referred to as a metropolitan transportation plan. Our nomenclature is, we call it our regional transportation plan. They're the same thing. It sets out long-term investment priorities and needs for transportation in this region, and how we will work collectively together with our available resources to help address those needs. We implement that over time through the Transportation Improvement Program, where, as Todd described this evening, we allocate actual dollars to actual projects and programs in the near term, in a 4-year term, to help implement that long-range need that's articulated in the Regional Transportation Plan. And then one of the things we're required to do is we present to you every year an annual listing of those projects that were obligated with federal transportation dollars that are provided to us. As part of our planning process, we have to consider certain planning factors that are established in federal statute. So right now there are 10. I always have to count because they do change every once in a while with new transportation reauthorization bills. So I'm not going to read all of these here. They're here for your reference and in your packet, but they deal with it. We do have to consider these things in our planning process. And statute doesn't exactly tell us how to consider them, and it doesn't say to what extent we have to consider which ones. Though it's flexibility for us, right? But we do have to consider them in our planning process. So things like economic vitality, safety, security, accessibility and mobility for both people and freight, travel and tourism, protecting the environment, integrating and connecting the transportation system across the region. System management and operation is a key planning factor, so we want to make sure the system is maintained well. through preservation, and then resiliency and reliability. So those are the current planning factors articulated in federal law that we have to consider in our planning processes. We do that and we articulate that planning process through this Unified Planning Work Program, which is why it's so important. It includes a discussion of the planning priorities facing us together. It identifies the work that we're going to do as the MPO. Statute requires us to do it at least every year. We do a 2-year work program. We think that works better for us in terms of laying out a strategy, because a lot of this work takes longer than just a single year. So we want to be a little bit more thoughtful moving forward about what we're going to do and plan for that work and budget for that work. And we talk about who's going to do the work. We develop a schedule in the work program for completing that work. We talk about what products will result from the work, the funding and allocation of resources, both financial and human resources to that work. And then we summarize the total amounts and sources of the federal funds and the matching funds that we provide for those federal funds. When we start putting together the work program with you and for you to consider, there's a whole bunch of things that I've talked about that we kind of have to do, right? These are things that Congress and the administration tell us we have to do in our metropolitan planning work. So it really is that transportation planning process. We make sure that our work keeps us all in compliance with federal law and regulation. And that's a really important thing, because if we ever get sideways, if we're not doing it the right way, the penalty can be the federal government withholding federal funds from our region. And that's not just DRCOG funds that flow directly to us. That would affect CDOT's ability to receive and expend federal transportation dollars, RTD's ability to receive and expend federal transportation dollars, and your ability to receive and spend federal transportation dollars if you got a specific competitive grant award to you. So the fact that we do this and we do it right is important and does have real ramifications for the region. We're talking about the Unified Planning Work Program tonight. We also do that regional transportation plan, the TIP. Performance measures are another component we're required to do. So that's why you see periodically, and I think last month at your meeting, adopted certain performance measures. Those are directed to us by the federal government. So we do that work, the congestion management process. And then our staff and our work plays a really important role in our air quality work to achieve and maintain federal air quality standards. There's a whole bunch of work that we do and we fund with our funding efforts that facilitates that work, because we can't just do that work without doing these things. So we collect and maintain and provide and make accessible tons of regional data to help inform our decision-making and your decision-making in this planning process. We maintain land use models and travel models to help us evaluate different choices and inform those choices through those efforts. We provide lots of technical assistance to our local government members and our partners around the region that is consistent with our metropolitan planning work. We provide lots of data and staff support for local transportation plans. We run a transportation operations program here at DRCOG that is not funded with our planning funds, but funded with funds that you allocate through the TIP. But it's a really important effort to make sure the system is operating as efficiently as it can. And then we have a really robust transportation demand management program operated out of communications and marketing, the Way to Go program that you see pretty frequently, and is a really important part of the work that we do. There's a number of considerations that we've been thinking about as your staff about sort of continuing efforts that we've already committed to do and upcoming efforts that are currently in the UPWP that we expect to kind of carry forward. So we've kicked off our major 4-year update to the regional transportation plan. During this time frame, we will have to go through a process to develop the next 4-year transportation improvement program, where we're allocating resources to projects. Our Vision Zero and safety initiatives will continue. We know there's ongoing work on federal discretionary awards that have been awarded either to us or to our partners that will continue to have some role in. Local transportation land use best practices and the transportation land use coordination, the housing transportation coordination work, and the regional housing strategy are all wrapped up into that work. We continue to do work on transit-oriented development issues to help leverage the investments we've made as a region in major transportation facilities and services to get the best utilization out of those through smart and local land use decisions, and then transit design standards or multimodal kind of efficient transportation design standards that we're doing some work on now. And then there's things that we continue to think about, and I promise I will stop talking very shortly and hand off to Josh so he can talk a little bit more and start to get your input. But this framework is important because there are a number of issues that we all know are facing this region. Our population growth is slowing, the growth rate is slowing down a little bit, but we continue to grow as a region pretty significantly. And that population in this region is aging, and that has perhaps different sort of ramifications, different impacts on our transportation thinking and how we do our planning work. Leveraging and transportation and land use for better overall outcomes. Technology is changing and having an impact on how we approach our metropolitan planning work. Greenhouse gas emissions and air quality continue to be an issue in this region that we'll need to consider. And then sort of how we make our system adapt over time to be more complete, to provide more multimodal options, and particularly safety on our system. So, and last but not least, funding limitations. Remember, this planning effort, we deal with a finite pot of resources, both for our planning work and those priorities that we set in our planning process through our regional transportation plan and TIP. So funding limitations is always front of mind. So with that, I just want to hand off to Josh for a quick overview of the structure of the current plan, and then he'll go through the Mentee exercise to get some of your input.
Thank you, Ron. So as Ron laid out, the Unified Planning Work Program does cover the work that we do as the Metropolitan Planning Organization for the region. So we wanted to give an overview of what's in the document because it does cover a very broad swath of what we do, but not quite everything that we do as an agency. So we just wanted to show what is currently in the document. So there are 9 objectives laid out in the document. The first one is really just administration. So that's things like staff development. That's things like compliance with federal and state regulations. Once we move into Objective 2, that's really where we get into public engagement, coordination with all of you all and our planning partners throughout the region. Objective 3, this really looks at the MetroVision plan and our land use and housing planning. Objective 4 is multimodal planning, so that includes our regional transportation plan, as well as our various modal plans, such as our active transportation plan, our freight plan, et cetera. Objective 5 is air quality, so this includes our federal air quality conformity process, as well as some of the climate planning included in the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant. Objective 6, this is project programming. So this is really our funding programs through our Transportation Improvement Program and our TIP set-asides. Objective 7 is really how we operate the systems. This includes our Regional Transportation Operations and Technology Program, as well as our Safety and Vision Zero programs. Objective 8 is public transportation planning. So that includes the work that we do at DRCOG around public transit, as well as some of RTD's transit planning. And then finally, Objective 9 is really that support objective that enables all of the rest of this through our data work, our mapping, and our modeling. So we wanted to share some of the results of prior engagement that we've done. We did reach out to members of our agency coordination team, which is made up of DRCOG staff, as well as CDOT, RTD, and our federal partners, as well as members of our Transportation Advisory Committee. We also went through the similar exercise with our Regional Transportation Committee yesterday. Those results have not been incorporated here since that just took place yesterday, but we still think that these initial results provide some interesting information. So we did ask what challenges are facing the region over the next couple of years. The main thing we heard here was concerns about funding, particularly potential reductions in funding. Also, major themes included congestion, including traffic congestion, as well as ways to shift mode choice to get some folks out of cars into alternative modes to reduce congestion. We heard about land use, particularly about affordability and that land use and transportation connection. And we heard concerns about climate and resilience, including reducing emissions, as well as preparing for some potential impacts of climate change, such as wildfires. We also heard a lot of concerns about safety, as well as some concerns around changes at the federal level and some of the uncertainty that that brings. We asked where more effort or resources could be used in the future. These are based off of kind of objectives 2 through 8 in the current document. What really came out on top was operating the system and safety. That was kind of the clear takeaway that we heard from those groups. But also land use and housing, transit planning, and then funding all came out as significant concerns. We asked what one thing could DRCOG do or do more of in the future. The big themes here were coordination and communication. Coordination really working with all of you at local agencies throughout the region, particularly around coordinated grant applications. And communication was really improving that public outreach point. And finally, we asked what might be important or urgent for the region to address over the next couple of years. Again, we see funding being the primary concern there, coming out on top, but also complete streets and safety, the connections between land use and transportation, as well as improvements to transit were kind of the top responses there. So with that, I wanted to lead you all into a similar exercise, and I'm hoping it works for me. There we go. So this is through the Mentimeter platform. If you have your phone on you, you can scan that QR code, or you can enter menti.com into a browser and enter the code on your screen, 93031391, and that will bring you to this poll. Once you're there, if you can hit that thumbs up button, that just lets me know that you're there, so it gives me a sense of whether everyone is able to join. I'll give you all a few seconds here to get in. I see about 21 of you are in so far. We're up to 24. I'll move us ahead. That bar at the top that has the web address and code will remain at the top. So if you're not in yet, you will still be able to enter through that. But I'll give it maybe a couple more seconds. I see a few phones still up. All right, I do see 27 folks are in, so I'm going to move us forward. Again, that bar will be at the top. If you haven't been able to join yet, you will still be able to. So what might some challenges be that are facing our region, or to think about it a little bit more optimistically, what opportunities do we have to address in the next couple of years? And while you're responding, I'll just note, as Ron sort of alluded to, this is kind of if you think about the process as a funnel, we're reaching out to all of you to try to get some of those broad themes. We're going to take all of this feedback back to staff. They're currently working through some exercises to identify specific tasks that they would like to work on over the next couple of years that are sort of in line with what we're hearing from all of our with all of our engagement to date. So we are getting some responses in. It looks like about 23 folks have responded so far. Give you all a few more seconds to get your responses in. Looks like we're at 30. Pretty good response rate. I'm seeing some great feedback so far. All right. Oh, every single time, as soon as I'm about to move us forward, a couple more come in. So I'll say take about 5 more seconds. If you're currently typing, get those in, and we'll move on to the next question. All right. So moving forward, where maybe could more resources or effort on the part of DRCOG be used in the next couple of years? So again, these are based on sort of objectives 2 through 9 in the current document. So kind of that public engagement and coordination piece, land use housing planning and metro vision, the regional transportation plan and multimodal planning, air quality, our funding programs, operating the system and safety, transit planning, and then kind of that data support side. And responses on this one just are hidden at the moment, just so it doesn't, you know, influence anyone as you're getting your responses in, but we'll show those once a few additional responses come in. Looks like about 12 of you have responded so far. We're at 26. I think if we can maybe hit 30. All right. So it looks like we have over 30 responses now. I'm going to go ahead and show those. So it looks like transit planning is at 3.9. So just so everyone knows how these work, the number in the circle, that is kind of the average response received, but then you can see sort of the distribution of responses through those peaks and valleys above the line. So about 3.9 on transit planning, and also 3.9 on operations and safety. Looks like those are the top 2. Oh, and they're changing as I'm talking. All right. So what one thing would you say that DRCOG should do, or if it's something we're already doing, do more of over the next 2 years? Oh. Is it working now? Okay, sorry about that. Safer roads, elevator inspections, expanding our area, securing funding, thinking where money should go when there's less of it, coordinating, getting some great responses so far. I'm just going to say it, we're in a little bit of a lull, so finish up typing if you're currently typing. Usually as soon as I say that, a bunch come in. Oh. Wow. Like maybe there's a Wi-Fi delay or something, but all of those responses now came in. Looks like we've got 31 responses, so that's a pretty good response rate. All right, I'm going to move us to our last question. What of these kind of issues or challenges that we had identified do you think might be kind of the most important or urgent for the region to address? I'll just note here it is kind of a 10-point scale, so if you could sort of score the most important or urgent with a 10 and maybe the least with a 1 or a 2. We realize they're all important issues, but help us parse them apart a little bit. That would be very appreciated. And similar to before, responses are hidden on this one, just so it's not influencing your votes. But once we get a few of those in, we can show them. Starting to come in. We're at about 14. And if we can get close to 30, we'll open this up. Oh, and there's 30. On this one, it looks like funding limitations has a 7.3, so I think that's pretty consistent with what we've heard elsewhere. Looks like our second one is up there at the top, so the changing demographics in the region. Hey, well, thank you all for providing that feedback. I think that's very good feedback for us to take back to staff and help them to think through some issues as they plan out the next document. Just to quickly run through next steps. So as I mentioned, staff are currently going through exercises to identify what those new tasks in the document might be. We're also continuing coordination with our federal and state partners. We expect to have the draft document available for public comment in June. That'll be out for roughly 2 weeks for public comment. We'll bring that to the Transportation Advisory Committee in July, and then to RTC and back to this body for proposed action in August. So with that, happy to take any additional questions or comments, but thank you all for your participation in that exercise. It's very appreciated.
Questions or comments for either Ron or Josh? I don't see any. Thank you. Appreciate it. Good.
Thank you.
Presentation. All right, I would call your attention to the informational items in your packet. We'll move on to item number 14, the committee reports. The chair does request that these reports be brief, reflect decisions made, and information germane to the business of DRCOG. From the State Transportation Advisory Committee, the STAC, Ron, can you give us an update on that?
Mr. Chair, Ron Papsdorf, Division Director of Transportation Planning and Operations, proud Michigan State alumni. I can help you with your brackets, Michigan State all the way through. This is their year. Okay, sorry, STAC summary from March 6th, 2025. Your representative, Councilor Byrd, was at the STAC meeting but was not able to be here this evening, so I'll do the quick update. The STAC agenda was fairly light in March. It did include a pretty significant overview from CDOT staff on their travel model statewide and how they use that and do their sort of greenhouse gas emission modeling and estimation work. So that was helpful. The only action item was a recommendation to the Transportation Commission on CDOT's fiscal year 25 and through 26 final annual budget proposal. Of note, due to the state's budget situation that you heard a little bit about before, there are cuts proposed in the CDOT budget. Two to note in particular. One is a reduction in the faster safety surcharge that people pay when they register their vehicles. That helps fund safety improvements on the system. So that's unfortunate, but it does affect the statewide budget. The proposal does include an adjustment for this period that the surcharge would be reduced so that the portion of funding from faster safety would be sustained that goes to local governments. So the reduction would hit CDOT, but they would maintain the flow of resources to cities and counties. The other piece is a reduction in previously planned general fund transfers from the general fund to CDOT's budget. That was part of a couple of past legislative measures, notably Senate Bill 260, if you recall that from a few years ago. There were some provisions to transfer from general fund resources to CDOT to help pay some of the debt service and other expenses associated with those funding measures. So that would be reduced. I guess deferred is more appropriate because there is a plan to try to catch up, but it will have some impact in the near term on some projects that had previously been programmed in the state's 10-year plan. STAC did vote ultimately to recommend the TC approve that proposed budget that now goes to the legislature once the commission approves it, sorry.
Thank you, Ron. Report from Metro Mayor's Caucus, Steve Conklin.
Good evening. Bud Starker sends his regrets. He had another commitment tonight, so he wishes he could be here. There has not been a full caucus meeting since we last met. However, the Metro Mayor's Caucus is still very active. We have had committees meeting, including the Housing, Homelessness, and Hunger Committee and the Transportation and Mobility Committee. Also, Metro Mayor's has been taking a lot of stands on various pieces of legislation that have been going on. And also last week was the graduation for the Mayor's Leadership Academy, including our own Chuck Harmon as one of the graduates there. So, and I don't know if there are any other graduates here, but wanted to recognize that. That's my report.
Great. Thank you very much. Report from Metro Area County Commissioners, Executive Director Rex.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. Just a couple things real quick. At last month's meeting on February 28th, we had a guest speaker, which was Executive Director Heidi Williams for Metro Mayor's Caucus. Her and proponents of House Bill 1272, the Construction Defects Middle Housing Bill, came and presented and made their case for the bill. The other thing I would like to mention, Metro Area County Commissioners received a very nice letter from Metro Denver Homeless Initiative, MDHI, just acknowledging the important work that county and county commissioners have done and will do as it relates to the homelessness issue that we have here in this region. So I thought that was really nice, and I just wanted to point that out. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Report from the Regional Air Quality Council. Again, Executive Director.
Thank you, sir, very much, and I'll be quick on this. We had a regular meeting on March 7th, the one thing, couple legislative updates, but we really are starting to get into the details now of the chapters associated with the next state implementation plan. So we dove deep on a couple of those areas, and it's got a lot of work ahead for us to get that document ready and over to the legislature next year.
Report from the E470 Authority, Director Mulvey.
Yeah, the meeting focused a lot on the Sable interchange and pursuing that project. There was also a very excellent update on what we call toll text smishing, which is all those emails you're getting. E470 has an extremely well qualified individual who has done an enormously deep dive to ascertain where it's coming from and such. And so there's an element of feeling good about somebody doing something about that. The Transportation Safety Foundation fundraiser is scheduled for June 20th. That's a fundraiser to give transportation safety grants to a variety of organizations, including children and people who need car seats. June 20th, Colorado National Golf Club. And then finally, there was results on the communications survey and how communications are going on the receiving end and the customer service end. So I can give more information for anybody so interested.
Thank you very much. CDOT, Director Pakpas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Transportation Commission had its workshop earlier today. A couple of items of note. They had a joint lunch with the Colorado Transportation Investment Office in terms of the usage of Senate Bill 184 and the joint service update that's being done on potential looking at Northwest Passenger Rail over the next decade. They did work through the proposed final budget, which is, of course, that may be reviewed later on with what comes out of the legislature. There was an update from the Bridge and Tunnel Enterprise, a planning update, and a overview of the Safe Routes to School program. In terms of activities germane to the DRCOG region, The Transportation Commission is going to hold a series of town halls as part of the statewide planning process, and we're working, of course, to have those working with our partners when those become available, probably towards the end of May. And of course, Region 1 is planning out its 4P county meetings as part of the planning process as well to take place this summer. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Report from RTD, Director Saroy.
Thank you, Chair. A couple things. Tuesday was Transit Employee Appreciation Day. That was a day, again, we wanted to celebrate particularly our frontline operators who, again, go through a lot on a daily basis. And so that day was used to celebrate them. I also want to say, for those of you who are thinking about going to the games, the NCAA games, either tomorrow or Saturday, please try to use transit. We will be having trains and buses serving those games. So unfortunately, you won't be able to see Ron's team because Ron's team is not playing in Denver, but you will be able to see some other Big Ten teams as a fellow Big Ten alum. And then also wanted to note that later next week, if you are downtown and you are using the mall shuttle, there will be a detour near Civic Center because of some of the work they're doing on Broadway associated with the mall reconstruction. So there will be a detour on that. So just be aware of that. And lastly, our board is going to be voting on the May service change next week. And again, like I think we've iterated before, we are again having another service change with service increases. So again, think very positively that we're on a good trend. And that concludes my remarks.
Thank you very much. We're moving on to administrative items, and our next meeting is April 16th. Make sure you have paid your taxes by then. And if there's anything else for the good of the group, Executive Director Rex.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple things. So first, this is primarily for the new members that are here. If you parked in the garage, do not go out these doors. Go through these doors and basically follow the crew, and they'll lead you out to the main hallway out here. So, and if you need parking validation, of course, see Melinda. All right, y'all, I only got 3. I got 3 brackets. I want more because these are not good.
There's more.
All right, bring them on down here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
All right, signed, sealed, delivered.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Aha, that's the secret.
Try to get a picture with the cool logo over there, but I couldn't, but at least get a picture of us. Okay. Flip around. I don't have a clue about anything other than like Duke.
Yeah, I know, I'm the same way.
Some confidence, my alma mater, so.
There you go. It's as good as anybody else.
Got my map?
It's a wild.
Thank you. Have fun with the March Madness.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know if we had this. I didn't know if we had Yes. Oh, you bet.
I did want to tell you when it might have been some voting fraud if that happened. I'm not exactly sure.
I understand.
But, we might have to talk to Katie about that.
There we go.
Whether or not she would approve of the patriot plot.
Yeah, she probably would frown on that. She might. Yeah.
Although maybe you're different.
Got one? Yeah, maybe. We're having a medalist come to the.
There you go.
Awards,
Well, thank you.
You're very welcome.
I was thinking of trying to get a primer on a lot of the stuff that
Yeah.
I was gonna call Lee.
Doug and Melinda can help you get that information, because we do have kind of a primer that we can send you, an onboarding, you don't go. Every city does things a little bit different.
You didn't have a witness one though. See, that's why you didn't get any response.
I knew that. I was afraid. You know what, I thought about that last night, I'm like, oh, shit.
We know you're better than that.
I got 2 daughters, so.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. I hope you enjoyed the meeting, and we'll see you next month. Yeah?
I will have to do my.
This is a great, I have to tell you, this is